I moved off the grid after the divorce. New Mexico fit me because it was pretty affordable. Land was cheap, the wind carried, and sun was reliable. I wanted simple living, a roof I paid for in sweat, a bank of solar panels that hummed like lifeblood, a tank full of collected rain and hauled water. Days would slip into this nice clean routine. Charge the batteries, check the lines, mend what breaks, sit on the stoop and enjoy what's mine. I even had windows for growing crops. Now, I didn't come all the way out here to hide. I'd already raised kids, worked not one but 2 careers, and tried to be all the things that all people are. But out here, the list just gets shorter. Keep the lights on, keep the pump primed, and enjoy every second of it. The nights out here were better than sex. Oh, baby. Zero light pollution, and coyotes tune the countryside, and stars cut through everything else. I heard a quote that really inspired me. War is easy. All you have to do is survive. I didn't want war, but I wanted that kind of mindset when I got up every single morning. The highway brings unwanted traffic. An interstate curls through the hills a few miles south, and it'll drag strangers the way river will drag garbage. Most will pass by, some wave from the shoulder and keep moving. But every so often, one will stray. Call it curiosity, boredom, strung out desperation. They walk the Auroros and fences like they're shopping. The harmless ones will make eye contact when they ask for water. The spun out ones will come right at you. I would keep polite boundaries, a no-nonsense tone, and a camera over my porch. The nearest neighbors sat a mile apart. I also kept a single-shot .410 in the kitchen drawer and a steadier prayer inside my chest that every day nobody would be showing up to bother me and I'd have to use it. The day my story takes place, it was really quiet. I was inside cleaning dishes when someone knocked on my front door. 3 knocks, and immediately I was on edge. Nobody knocks out here. People honk or they shout from their trucks, and that's only when they show up. I have a visitor once a month, maybe, if at all. So when that sound erupted through my house, I froze for a second. Through the window, I saw a man standing on my porch. Mid-20s maybe, neat hair, clean shaven. His shirt was buttoned up to the neck, but the fabric was stained dark at the armpits and collar. Looked decent from a distance, less so up close. He gave me this polite smile. "Afternoon, ma'am. Hope I'm not intruding." "What do you need?" I asked him simply. Just kind of curious about your solar setup," he said. "I'm thinking about putting one in myself." That line would get me all the time, people wanting to see how I did it. Most of them were pretty harmless, and some turned out to actually be solar salesmen, of course. I opened the door just a few inches and left the chain on. "You running a system already?" I asked him. "Trying to. I bought property right down the road here, off the pass. I figured I'd ask around before spending a bunch of money, you know?" He looked at me dead in the eye, but something didn't really match up. His pupils were blown wide, and there was this sour smell under his cologne, ammonia or something. "What brand inverter are you using?" I asked. He blinked. Outback." "Which model?" He smiled at me like I asked him some kind of trick question. The basic one, I'm pretty sure." That's when I knew he was lying to me. Anybody who's ever touched a solar setup can't stop talking about watts and charge times. This guy was 100% guessing at all the answers, telling me what I wanted to hear. So again, the alarm bells start going off in my head. "Look, I can't really help you," I told him. "You should probably just go talk to the hardware store in town. There's a solar company too." He leaned on the doorframe. "Just 5 minutes. I'm not selling anything, I swear. I've been walking for hours." That's when I realized just how dirty he was. "From where?" I asked. "Down by the wash?" "That's 10 miles away." He shrugged at me. "I get around." I was about to shut the door when I heard something faint from the far side of the house, a scrape like a shoe brushing stucco. I felt it more than I heard it. He caught my pause. "You okay?" he asked me. "Yeah," I said. "Are you alone?" He smiled again. "Of course I am." The sound came once more, softer this time, window glass shuffling. Someone was out back. "I think you should go," I said. He tilted his head, listening into my house. "You got somebody else here?" "That's none of your business." "Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to pry." But he didn't move. He just stood there watching my face, waiting for any kind of sign. His fingers flexing at his waist. I could see the dirt under his nails, caked all black. "Look," I said. "It's getting late, and I don't let strangers hang around after dark." He didn't back off. He only responded back with, "It's lonely, doesn't it?" "I'm fine with lonely." "I bet you hear weird and strange things out here." "Yeah, well, nothing I can't handle." That air between us tightened. He shifted his weight, getting ready to push. I felt it in my gut. "Back up," I said to him. "Come on, man, I'm not gonna hurt you." "Back up." His smile faltered. "Do you really think you're safe out here?" Immediately after, he lunged forward, fast and desperate. The chain caught the door halfway, snapping tight, and I slammed it shut with everything I had. His fingers were in there when it hit, crushing under the weight of the door. That sound that came out of him didn't even sound human. It was high, wet, and furious. He yanked, but I leaned my shoulder into the door. I was not letting him have his hand back. "Get off my porch!" I screamed at him. He finally pulled back, leaving streaks of blood on the wood. "Eli! Eli, come help me!" he shouted. And that name turned my stomach. There was another one. I ran through the kitchen, down the hall, and the back window, the one by my bedroom, was 2 inches open, and the screen bent inward. A man's face was hovering there, pale and pocked with sores, eyes very dilated. He was rail skinny, beard patchy, wearing a stained wife beater. He froze when he saw me, then tried to shove himself through. "Get out!" I screamed, grabbing the gun from the drawer. A short barrel 410 single shot, but it looked like a cannon up close. It was my snake gun around the property, something I usually use to get rid of the pests. I pointed it dead center at his chest. He stopped moving. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then he smiled the most hateful smile I've ever seen. "You said you were going to be easy," he muttered. "Move away from my window or I'll put a hole in your lungs." He held up his hands, half laughing. "We were just looking around. No need to get angry." I cocked the hammer, and the sound went through the house and wiped that stupid grin off that asshole's face. He stumbled backwards, tripping over something outside, then took off towards the ridge. I ran to the front and slammed that extra deadbolt, then grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Of course, it took forever for the dispatcher to answer me.
911, what's your emergency?
"There's 2 men on my property," I said. "One tried to break in. The other, he's bleeding bad. They're still out here somewhere."
Ma'am, where are you located?
I gave her my location twice, and she told me the sheriff's was sending units from town, but it'd take at least 30 minutes to get here. And out here, 30 minutes is a lifetime. It's actually the only real danger when living out here. I heard about a neighbor out in the desert having a stroke, and he died because it took the ambulance too long to get there.
Stay inside. Keep your doors locked.
The dispatcher said. Already done. I walked my house with the gun in one hand and the phone in the other, breathing like I just run some kind of marathon. I watched the windows and checked every lock twice. The sun was now gone, the light turning red across the desert. Through the kitchen window, I saw them again, both men standing at the edge of my property. The clean one was clutching his hand, holding a rag around it. The thin one had his arm around him like they were some kind of couple of stooges. They were speaking back and forth, but too far away for me to hear what they were actually saying. Then they both turned back toward the house. The clean one raised his hand and flipped me off, and the other followed suit. They stood there for a long moment, silhouettes against the dying light, then started off west toward the Badlands. Away from town or any semblance of civilization, and seeing them walk that way haunts me still to this day, because in my heart, I can't fathom where they were going or what they could have possibly been waiting for them out there. I watched until they disappeared over the ridge. I kept the lights off and the curtains open, pacing from window to window, gun in hand. The desert looked flat and harmless, but every bush now looked like it could move. Every gust felt like and sounded like footsteps just outside. The dispatcher called twice to check in, and both times she told me the same thing: help's on the way. And both times I told her I was fine, but it still felt like the walls were closing in. I continued to sweep the house, bathroom, spare room, pantry, then checked every door a third time. The front doorknob was streaked with blood and I didn't clean it off. I wanted proof that any of this actually happened. Outside, the wind picked up and my floodlight on the pole buzzed and flickered, throwing short shadows across the porch. I raised my gun, aiming more at nothing but the darkness beyond my fence. Then, slowly, headlights came into view. 2 vehicles bumping down the dirt road, sirens off, dust halos around them. I set the gun on the table and met them at the door when they knocked. 3 deputies came inside with flashlights and checked my house, the sheds, and the perimeter. Found prints and some boot and some bare. One deputy followed a trail halfway to the Aurora, but it ended in the sand. "Well, they're gone," he said to me. "But you did the right thing. Handled that pretty damn well." I asked if they'd come back and he looked at me and sighed. "Probably not. But keep your gun close and keep all your doors locked." They left around midnight. I locked the door behind them and listened to the silence slowly return. The next morning, I drove into town, bought a new lock for the back door, some motion lights, and a 12 gauge with a short barrel and smooth action. I bought some more cameras too, 4 of them, wireless with night vision. That weekend, I mounted every single one, so the next time I have a visitor like that, I'll see them way before they actually knock on my door. I grew up going to Boy Scouts, and we kept that same scoutmaster, same meeting room inside the church, same handful of boys growing taller every single year. We were all decent kids, learned how to set a splint, tie a bowline, share food when somebody forgot theirs. We teased one another, but it stayed friendly, at least usually. Halfway through my years with the troop, a new kid moves into town and ends up joining us. His name was Kelvin. He was thin and kind of vacant. Not shy so much as calculating, I guess. Had a buzzed hair and wore these oversized clothes. Everybody tries hard when they're new, right? But Kelvin didn't really try at all at anything. He was just kind of a background person, like a snake in the grass. And some of the things he did were just plain unsettling. On the first campout that he came with us on, he held a lighter underneath his spider wolf and watched it curl and pop. He didn't even flinch at the sight. Later that night, I caught him rummaging through Scoutmaster Tom's gearbox, fingers slipping around the sheath of the man's knife. Even tried to key into his phone, and when he saw me, he just smiled. "Inventory," he said, then pressed a finger to his lips. I tried to just leave it alone, kids are weird, but after I noticed all these small things, the way Kelvin would drift toward the edges of a group and listen more than actually speak, how he would just linger after meetings, staring up at the wall map of our county, the back roads tracing in these thin red lines, how he saved every match head inside this film canister. If he got teased, he didn't blush or swing, he just stored the moment away, smiling and nodding along. I caught him killing too many animals on almost every outing. Nothing big, just usually bugs, but does it really matter? He obviously enjoyed the act of causing pain. I remained as professional as I could and tried to be decent to him. Showed him how to read a bearing and how to coil up a rope. He watched me closely every time I did, and when I laughed at one of Ricky's dumb jokes, Kelvin laughed a half a beat later, and not because it was funny, but because it seemed like the right thing to do. No real ability to socialize. Scoutmaster Tom told us that in fall, we'd be doing the annual 3-day trip, way out in the wilderness, a place without service or fences. Real independence, he called it, and Kelvin looked at me then and didn't look away. We left before dawn on Friday. The sky was still purple when Scoutmaster Tom's truck rumbled down that dirt road, packed up with gear and 8 half-awake boys. The drive took us hours, a high desert fading into the pine forest, asphalt to gravel, then gravel to narrow ruts swallowed up by the trees. When we finally stopped, there wasn't a sound in any direction. No other camps, no power lines. It was just us. "Set up base camp, scouts," Tom said. "We're off-grid from here on out." We moved like we'd done it 100 times. Tents up, trenches dug, firing cleared, bare rope hung. The air was nice and crisp and dry, resin heavy from some kind of recent rain. Tom watched us work, hands on his hips, nodding every so often. We all joked around, but Kelvin, per usually, was barely even speaking. He worked fast, almost surgical with his knife and hammer, and when Tom showed him this knot, he tied it perfectly on the first try, then untied it and did it again. He looked up at me when he did it the last time. By sunset, the camp was looking pretty perfect. Smoke rose straight up from the fire, no wind or rain in sight. We ate some glizzies and s'mores and told stupid jokes. Tom strummed his guitar and sang all kinds of old outlaw country, and the younger boys continued to laugh at everything. Kelvin, again, didn't laugh. He sat apart from us, eyes fixed on the fire, not exactly zoning out, almost like he was studying it. When somebody tossed a pine cone into the flames and popped, Kelvin didn't even blink. That night I ended up waking up twice, once to pee and once because I thought I heard footsteps crunching around my tent. I listened, holding my breath. Just the wind through the trees maybe, or Kelvin, but I didn't check. Morning would come with a sheet of frost over everything. Tom brewed up coffee on the camp stove and handed out some oatmeal. "Today's gonna be all about earning those merit badges, boys," he said. We ran drills all morning, first aid, navigation, knots, traps. My fingers burned from tying rope, but it felt good, like a warm-up. Tom was a stickler for details, but always calm, the kind of man who would light a fire inside the rain. Around noon, we were sweaty but victorious. We'd cleared almost every objective for the day. Lunch was crackers, jerky, and canteen water. It tasted a little like metal. Then Tom pulled out this folded map. "Solo loop," he said. "You'll take the ridge trail, circle the mountain, and be back by 4. You'll each check in by radio every hour. This is how we build independence. Do not cut corners. Do not panic if you lose signal. Stick to the compass. Otherwise, trust your instinct, boys." We cheered. It was our favorite part of every trip, freedom without supervision. Kelvin smiled for the first time all weekend, and for some reason, that made my stomach sick. That trail was really steep and unforgiving, and dust kicked up even to stick to our skin. We passed through the stands of junipers, then tall pines that blocked out the sun. The further we went in, the quieter it seemed to get. Ricky continued to crack jokes, and David led the way with his map. Kelvin was hung behind me, silent, per usual. I glanced back occasionally, catching him looking into the trees inside the trail. Okay, well, maybe he was normal after all. After a few miles, we reached this overlook, a flat shelf of granite facing a canyon full of red rock and skeet brush. Below us, you couldn't even see our camp. It felt like another world entirely. We drank water, took turns with the radio, and checked in. Tom's voice came through crackly but clear.
"Copy that. You're all doing fine. Keep your bearings."
And that's when David pointed up the slope. "Hey, what is that?" I followed his finger about 50 yards uphill, and this dark gap broke the hillside. It looked like a shallow cave, almost hidden by the brush itself. Looks like a hole to me," Ricky said. "Let's check it out." David grinned. "It could be some kind of old mining stuff." Kelvin's voice was flat. "Or an animal den." David rolled his eyes. "Come on, we'll be quick." I hesitated. The sun was already leaning west. 10 minutes, that's all, then we gotta turn back." We scrambled up there, hands and knees, dirt sliding underneath. The climb was worse than it actually looked, and when I looked back down, the rest of the troop were specks near the trees. Ricky called something up and we could barely even hear him. The cave mouth was narrow but deep. Cool air was drifting out and the smell was damp and earthy. I shined my flashlight inside, and the light was quickly swallowed entirely. Ricky stopped short. "No, okay, I'm good right here." "Fine," David said. "Stay, guard dog." So David ducked in first, flashlight beam bobbing. Kelvin followed without any hesitation, silent as a shadow, and I went in last. Inside, the world quickly shrank. The rock walls pressed in close on both sides, brushing our shoulders as we moved in. The floor sloped and scattered with gravel and bones, rodents by the look of them. My light caught the backs of the other two boys, then flickered off the stone and came back at me in broken glints. "This is so sick," David said. "It feels like we're in a movie." "Let's not die in one," I muttered back. We reached a fork and a wider pocket to the left and a narrow squeeze ahead. David aimed his beam through the gap. Looks like another chamber." "Seriously?" I said. "Look, we're already pushing it, man, and I don't see any kind of mining equipment." He grinned at me. "Come on, 2 more minutes, that's it." Kelvin glanced at me over his shoulder. "Oh, you scared?" "No," I said. "I just don't want to do anything stupid." He smiled. "Same." David slipped in first, and the passage was tight, barely enough room to crawl. I waited until his light disappeared into the next space, then crouched to follow. Kelvin went ahead of me, one hand on the wall for balance. Halfway through, my pack scraped a rock and held. I twisted, trying to ease it loose, but it wouldn't budge. "Kelvin," I said, voice low. "Grab my strap." He turned, his headlamp lighting up my face. His eyes now looked really strange in the beam, flat and glassy. "You're stuck?" "Yeah. Little help here?" He crouched silently and then he smiled. "You feel trapped?" "Come on, man, just pull on it." He leaned close enough that I could smell the Gatorade on his breath. "And what if I don't?" My heart kicked. "What?" Kelvin brushed his fingers along the dirt shelf above me, gathering up a handful of loose grit and let it fall, pebbles bouncing off my neck. "Stop!" I hissed. "Kelvin, what the hell, dude?" He did it again, really burying me now. "Do you feel it now?" He asked softly. "When you can't move?" "Cut it out!" I shoved against the wall, scraping my skin. "I mean it, dude. I'm gonna kill you." He then laughed in a way that I'd never heard before, and it looked like he had a heart on. Then he stood up and turned, crawled away, back toward the dark. "Kelvin!" My voice cracked. "Come back, please!" Silence met me, and the cave seemed to almost breathe, the darkness pulsing around me. I pushed, I twisted, fought for leverage until my back was screaming. Finally, the pack strap tore free, and I crawled backward, elbows scraping my knees until I reached the open space. David's light flickered somewhere ahead, completely oblivious. "You good?" he called out. "Yeah," I lied. "I'm coming." When I crawled back into daylight, the sun was a little lower than I expected it to be, late afternoon bleeding toward evening. Ricky jumped when he saw me. "Jesus, dude, where were you?" I pointed behind me, breathing hard. Kelvin, he left me stuck in there." David then stepped out of the cave, mouth squinting. "What? He was right behind me." "He wasn't. He stayed back. I stopped, realizing how weak it sounded. It wasn't even worth the trouble. "Forget it. Let's just get down before we lose all the light." Kelvin appeared a minute later, calm as ever, wiping dirt off his shirt. His flashlight dangled loose from one wrist. When I met his eyes, he smiled at me, like nothing had even happened. "Oh, there you are. Where were you?" he asked. "You ready to go?" Something in me wanted to hit him, but David was already halfway down the slope and the others were waiting, so I just kept my mouth shut. That climb back was really quiet. Dust puffed up to us again. The trees turned black against that gold sky, and Ricky hummed our Boy Scout marching song. Every time I looked at Kelvin, he would look away, but the whole time, he never stopped grinning. When we got back to camp, Tom was by the fire stirring up a pot of chili. "You guys made decent time," he said. "Everything go smooth?" "Mostly," David said, glancing at me. We found this cave and got a little split up." I opened my mouth but then closed it again. I didn't even know how to explain what Kelvin had done without sounding like a kid tattling, so I just nodded and went directly to my tent. Dinner tasted incredible. The others laughed and traded stories from the hike. And Kelvin sat at the edge of the firelight, carving a stick with his pocket knife, the blade glinting every time it turned. When Tom would look away, Kelvin's eyes would flick up at me, like he was waiting for me to say something. And when Tom strummed his guitar that night, it almost put us to sleep. The fire was down to coals and shadows moved against our tents. I pretended to read my field guide, but all I could think about was the ache in my back, arms, and shoulders. I lay awake long after everybody else was asleep. Wind was moving through the trees, coyotes somewhere beyond it. Every sound felt too nearby. I heard footsteps at one point, and when I peeked through my tent, I saw Kelvin crouched in the shadows. I had no idea what he was doing. I ducked down and kept my knife close by. Somewhere near midnight, something brushed up against the canvas, and my nerves had now turned into fireworks just under my skin. When I worked up the courage to look, there was nobody there. In the morning, Kelvin was the first one up. He sat up by the ashes, poking them with a stick. When I stepped out, he smiled at me. "You sleep okay?" I just glared at him, and he grinned like he could see the answer on my face. "What's with you, dude?" "What's with what?" he asked. "Why are you acting like this?" I didn't really know what else to say to him. Kelvin raised his eyebrow as high as he could, then moved his head side to side. It was beyond creepy. Tom called us to pack up, voice cheerfully unaware. We broke down camp, loaded up the gear, and hiked out the way we came. Kelvin marched right along behind me. When we reached the truck, I finally told Tom. Not everything, just that Kelvin had messed around in the cave and scared me on purpose. Tom frowned at me but didn't really press. "All right, I'll talk to him," he said. If he did, I never heard anything more about it, and we didn't really speak much more about that trip again. Kelvin stayed in the troop through spring, then quit without a warning. Moved away, somebody said, and I don't think really anybody cared, but I still, to this day, remember that cave, how quiet it was, and how close the walls really felt. And then somewhere in the blackness, Kelvin's voice will still be whispering, "You feel it now." We'd been living out of the van for 3 weeks when we found the river and the bluffs. Utah goes on forever if you know where to look. We followed a rutted 2-track past a gate that didn't lock and drifted down into a basin of red rock and cottonwoods. It was truly a beautiful, secluded stretch of desert. My girlfriend and I run an off-grid vlog, nothing fancy. A couple of cameras, a drone, tripods, mics with those fuzzy covers. We film what we use, what we eat, where we sleep, all the ways it goes wrong as well. People like the mistakes more than they actually like the wins, and we earn that pretty early on. I talk to the lens, and she shoots. We edit in the dark on a folding table with nothing but our power cell batteries. Those first few days were really perfect out there. We filmed this camp kitchen segment about sheep camp tacos, floated the river with our sandals tied through our belt loops. We hiked the bluff trail, breathless once at the top, and took a thumbnail photo of us grinning like idiots at the valley wide open behind us. At night, we lay on the tailgate and watched the satellites drift. There was this unbelievable amount of them. Coyotes yipped far off, and I slept like a baby. I thought maybe we'd stay for a week, maybe 2. There was enough flat spots to move and camp every few days, enough deadfall for small fires, 0 service, so no uploading shorts, just content creation and some light editing. We met nobody. A couple of rigs passed high on the distant ridge and then would vanish soon after. Otherwise, it was pretty much all ours. On the 3rd evening, we lugged gear into the water for a golden hour shoot. The sun slid to setting and then turned the cliff's hot bronze. She waded up to her knees, laughing and complaining, while I framed a long shot of the bend where the river hooked north. The light hit something across the canyon and flashed for just a second. "Did you see that?" she asked me. Probably a bottle or something," I said, squinting. I raised the camera, zoomed, and panned along the opposite bluff. Cottonwoods hid most of the rim. Then the sun broke through the gap and the glare hit again. A flat plate of shine. Not a bottle, but glass. There, half tucked beneath the trees, sat this black van. No movement, no sound, just kind of there where nothing had been all week long. Watching the same view that we were, or maybe watching us. At first, we honestly didn't think much of it. People will come and go and camp in strange spots all the time. Maybe they'd come in from the other side following some old mining road that we didn't see. But the van didn't move that night. No campfire, no music, no lantern glow, just a black box sitting in the dark across the canyon. That following morning, still there. Creepy, she muttered, zooming in with the telephoto. No plates, no windows either. That's really weird. It has to be one of those converted rigs, I said. Overlanders or something, you know? But even as the words left my mouth, I knew I wasn't right. There was no chairs, no gear, no solar panels, just the van, and zero evidence of any kind of recreation being had. We spent that day shooting content, filtering water, cooking beans, setting up a tarp station, and then trying to forget it all. By sundown, we'd convinced ourselves it really was nothing. But as the canyon turned purple and the stars started to burn through the haze, the air around us seemed to change and the wind stilled. It got really, really quiet. Then came the lights. They weren't like planes or satellites. They darted, stopped, dropped, and shot upward again in these impossible bursts. Sometimes they glowed red, sometimes they glowed blue. One flickered directly above the ridge, a jagged pulse that reminded us of some kind of kaleidoscope. My girlfriend filmed until her battery died, but when we checked the footage, there was nothing, just black sky. Maybe some kind of reflection? I said. Reflection of what? She asked me. It's a canyon. There's nothing out here to reflect off. No, maybe like some kind of atmospheric thing. Our lenses don't have what it takes to pick it up. And that's when we both noticed the movement across the ravine. The van's side door was now open. Figures moving in and out, 3, maybe 4. They carried tripods and something that looked like a large antenna. One of them kept sweeping the lights with what looked like binoculars. Another stood on the roof of the van with something that glowed faintly green. Their setup looked far too advanced for some kind of meteor watching. Way too organized. I raised my flashlight and clicked it twice, a friendly signal. Got nothing back. They didn't react. They didn't even look our way.
Hey!
I yelled across the gap, my voice echoing off the stone. The figure on the roof froze, and just for a second, they turned away, stepping down from the van. We went back inside the tent not long after, and neither of us could really sleep. The air was heavy, like right before a storm. Every time I close my eyes, I see those lights again, jerking, twitching, zigzagging across the sky like fireflies out on a wire. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a low hum. It wasn't close, but steady and mechanical. I unzipped the flap, and the van's headlights were on now, dimmed and pointed toward the sky. Those strange lights were back, more of them, scattered and moving a lot faster. My girlfriend sat up beside me, whispering, "Oh my God, they're right above us." And they were everywhere. I watched one of the men across the canyon raise up his equipment, and that hum quickly grew louder. The air felt staticky, hair rising even, and then just as suddenly everything kind of blinked out. The hum, the lights, the motion, gone. And that van went dark again. They hauled their stuff back into the van and went back to being quiet. We slept at dawn, woke late, and found it parked in the exact same spot. No visible equipment, no people, no nothing. It went on like that for 3 more nights. Every evening around 10, the sky erupted with that strange activity. Every morning, silence and emptiness. And our cameras never caught a thing. No lights, nothing but blank footage. Phones, GoPros, even the drone, all completely useless. It was as if the phenomenon wasn't happening at all, except that we were seeing it, clear as day, but only with our eyes. We started rationing the food and water early on just in case. I wanted to leave, but she said nobody's gonna believe us if we don't get some kind of proof. So we stayed. Maybe there's some kind of meteorologist, I offered, studying something rare, like ball lightning. She stared at me like I was full of shit, and maybe I was. I didn't argue. I started keeping the hatchet beside the sleeping bags, and I noticed her phone was always in her pocket now. The final night we were out there was probably the worst. The lights appeared earlier, just after sunset. flickering right above the ridge. The van's side door was wide open, silhouettes pacing in the glow of red headlamps. The hum was deeper this time, vibrating through the ground like the bass of an approaching train. I stepped out with the camera anyway. "This is night 4, I whispered, trying to keep my hand steady. "The van's active again, unknown equipment, 3 subjects, maybe 4, tracking lights in the sky. Can't explain the silence out here. There's no wind, there's no animals, nothing." Behind me, my girlfriend whispered, "They're looking this way." And they were. Every single head turned toward us in this perfect unison, red lamps blinking like eyes. One of them raised something, binoculars or a scope, and a moment later, our tent lights flickered and died. The air snapped cold. The camera shut off in my hand. It was like we had been hit with some kind of EMP blast. We didn't speak again until morning, and when the sun came up, the van still hadn't moved, and there was again no sign of those people. That's when we made the decision to cross the canyon that night and see for ourselves what was going on inside that van. It took nearly 45 minutes to cross. The bluff walls were like ribs around the basin, and every sound that we made, every scrape, every breath, seemed to echo on and on. We didn't talk, we didn't really need to. All that mattered was finding out who these people were and what they were doing out here. When we finally crested the other side, the van sat about 50 yards off. Its headlights were dead, windows blacked out. Up close, it didn't look new. It was dented, rust bleeding through the paint near the door handles. There's still no sound and still no movement. We crouched behind this boulder, and my girlfriend whispered over to me, "Maybe they left?" I was about to agree, but the van's door slid open with that loud shunk. A flashlight hit us full in the face. "Stop right there," a man barked. His voice was raspy. I froze, hands instinctively going up. He stepped closer, the beam shaking in his grip. The light caught his face for just a second. Stringy mullet, missing teeth, red-rimmed eyes. Tattoos climbed up his neck like veins, faded and ugly. He held a rifle, pointed at the ground, but angled it enough that one wrong move would make it level. Hey, we're just, I started, but he cut me off. "You shouldn't be here. Turn around now." Behind him, the other figures moved, loading up equipment into the van. Tripods, long cases, coiled cables that glittered silver in the light. None of them spoke or even looked at us. "Look, we just wanted to know what you were..." He stepped to us again, jabbing the barrel in my chest. "This ain't none of your business, boy. You get back to your side before you make it fatal." My girlfriend whispered that we were leaving. The man backed up without lowering the gun. "Good, do that." He turned and shouted something to the others, words I didn't quite catch, then climbed in the driver's seat. The van roared to life, yellow cones of the headlights hitting us in the face, and for a second, the glare was completely blinding. When my vision cleared, I saw them, 3 silhouettes in the cab, all facing forward, motionless as mannequins. They reversed, spun out onto the dirt road, and drove off without a word. The hum was gone, the lights in the sky were gone too, just black emptiness above us, and the sound of the van slowly fading off into the desert. We stood there for a long time, I think too shocked to move or do anything, and when we finally made it back to camp, dawn was breaking, washing the canyon in that weak pink light. Everything felt strange, the tent, the gear, even the river now to us. We packed up in silence, loaded the truck, and left before the sun even touched the ridges. Around a week later, I went through every file, every clip. All of our footage from those nights was either black or corrupted. No lights, no van, not even our own voices. Absolutely no trace of that night exists, outside of the ones in our memories.